First of all, good evening, everybody. Good evening to my esteemed panelists and the wonderful audience here. Yes, we can clap for each other, yes. It has been an absolutely, I would say, engaging evening so far with extremely enriching discussions since the time it has started. And the next session is actually very, very close to my heart. Having myself spent around almost 2 decades in the supply chain industry, having seen this industry taking various transformations in its own forms, having seen this industry from a completely brick and mortar led industry to a completely digital, I would say not completely, but today things don't move when they don't move digitally. So it's extremely close to my heart. Supply chain used to be one corner office in a lot of corporates at one point of time. Today, supply chain has taken the center stage in at least delivering value in a lot of organizations. Through the next 45 minutes, I, along with my esteemed panelists, wish to navigate through some of the questions which will basically derive how to deliver value through supply chain strategies in the new Bharat. With that thought, I move on to my first panelist, a person who is extremely entrenched into this particular industry, Himanshu. And Himanshu, my first question to you is, how do you think has the consumer behavior evolved in recent times? How do you think organizations' growth strategies should keep up with pace, innovate with changing dynamics, and also deliver value at the right time?
Thanks so much, Dipanjan, and good evening, everyone. I think we are moving on to a slightly more serious session now. So you'll have to bear with us because I think most of the session is going to be relatively serious. In terms of the consumer expectations, what should organizations do, etc., I will restrict myself to a few of the pointers on the lifestyle segment. That's what we operate in, because otherwise it's a very vast subject to deal with. And within that specific focus on value lifestyle. If you look at the market size and quick statistics, just to set the context. Value lifestyle market close to around $100 billion segment. Out of this $100 billion, approximately 92% is retail, traditional plus modern, 8% is e-commerce. Then this is $100 billion is supposed to go to around $200 billion over the next 4 to 5 years. We also have within this, we have this 8% of e-commerce is supposed to go to 22%. Now these are just basic numbers, but what is interesting is something else. And from the consumer point of view is that there is this whole feeling that the entire consumer base that we have, it is homogeneous. It is actually two separate cohorts which are in play, two broad cohorts for the sake of simplicity. Amongst the 200 odd million people, 20 crore people who are shopping online, out of the 700 or 800 odd million people who have got access to smartphones and network, internet, this 200 million odd people, around close to 80 to 100 million people are from the more privileged sections, people who have got onto internet long time back, and the pre-geo revolution people. Now these are digitally native. They are largely in the metro cities. Yeah, they're reasonably uniform in their behavior in some ways, with some geographical differences. And then you have the next 100 million, which have come into the e-commerce fold post the geo revolution, and of course exaggerated by COVID when it happened. Now this 100 million is quite different from the first 100 million. This is in tier 2 cities. This is in cities where typically the whole experience, whether it is the modern trade or it is e-commerce, is not tailored for them. The modern trade and the e-commerce experience has been tailored for the consumers who are more metro-centric, who can understand English, who are connected with the international norms and trends. It is not meant for the people who are earning, let's say, up to 20,000 rupees household income or 20,000 to 50,000 household income. And the opportunity which is there is that the next 200 million who will start shopping, you and I both know it is going to be from this segment, because the first 100 million covers all the set of people who have more money and who are in metro cities and who have been digitally native for a long time. That segment, everybody is shopping. So the next 200 million is again going to come from them. The solutioning that we all need to do in terms of is to understand these are two segments and both offer good opportunities. But we are focused as Snapdeal on the second opportunity, which is in terms of the people who live in tier 2 cities, smaller cities, mufassil towns, towns the names of which I and you wouldn't have heard of. Coastal Andhra, there are hundreds of these towns. UP, we all know. Bihar, we know. All kinds of cities, towns, mufassil towns. And these are people who do not understand English. They do not understand, in fact, most of the time, they can't read long text. They can't read difficult terms. So the entire requirement that is coming through for this segment is in terms of technology that works for them, experience that works for them, goods that are of good quality, decent quality, reach them in decent amount of time. Yeah, experience which is good. Return experience needs to be good for them. This is the second segment. I am not going to dwell on the first segment because first segment everybody talks about, because that's the segment which is visible. Everybody, all of us belong to that segment, and that's the segment that gets talked about in the media.
Thank you, Himanshu. Very interesting, and I have a couple of thoughts to what you said. I'll come back to you later on some of those. My next question is to Sourabh. Sourabh, you have been in this industry for very long, and you have dealt both in the value segment, you have dealt in vertical fashion for a very long time, you have built supply chains for both. I think one thing that always excites me is data. What, according to you, is data in supply chain? How do you use data and analytics to better understand and meet consumer demands? And more interestingly, how do you ensure customer experience through data?
Okay, so a lot of times people believe supply chain's job starts once the order is placed, right? But I think supply chain plays a very large part in converting that customer and making that, placing that order in the first time. So I think in the pre-order journey, the first place where data plays a very large part is how do you promise and how do you ensure that you're promising the best stats to the customer. I think data plays a very large part in it. The more real-time inputs that you can get into how congested a particular node is, what the weather conditions are, what the road conditions are, what the road restrictions are in a country like ours, that helps you that allows you to give a more tighter and a better promise to the customer. I think that's the first place where supply chain data plays a very large part in the conversion funnel, even before an order is placed. I think the second part that comes in is, again, and Himanshu touched it beautifully in terms of the value segment. The value segment today has a large challenge around addresses. I think when we talk about consumers who have come in recently to the ecosystem, to e-commerce and online, there is a challenge in terms of them being able to put in addresses that are consumed by the logistics systems and used well. So I think, again, that's another area where data plays a very large part. So there is a lot of good work being done in terms of converting these not so good addresses into more deliverable pieces of information that people can act upon and ensure that deliveries to these customers can happen. The next part where data plays a very large part, and again, this is important, is reducing wastage in the system. I think all of us are in this business at the end of the day to make profits. A large part of leakages in the entire value chain of e-commerce comes from things like RTOs. Now, return to origin is a very, very big problem, and I'm guessing a lot of people here have faced that as a problem statement. Now, when you look at why a return to origin happens, or why do we see that a customer is not accepting an order, there are a lot of data points that are spread across the journey of that shipment which tell you, hey, what has happened? Has it been misrouted to a certain place? Is the customer address quality good, bad, so on and so forth, right? So this is, again, one large area where it plays a very large part, and it can also play a large part in how to reduce costs in the system. And finally, and this is one thing which is actually not invested in enough, but again, when I've working with the more demanding side of the customer base in the past, one of the things that data helps you also analyze and understand is your last mile quality. And this is actually one of the most critical aspects of how a consumer interacts with your platform. How do they feel when the delivery boy shows up at their doorstep with their package? And how do you measure that? And how do you ensure that you're able to capture this information and use that to better train these people to ensure that they're provided tools to solve for it? It's probably one of the biggest use cases for data. So there are more that I can speak about, but I think these are the 4 big ones that I could think of.
I think, thank you. Very, very valid points. Fortunately, one of them addresses something that we'll cover in a product launch that we'll do towards the end of the evening. But turning our attention slightly towards the global arena, we have spoken about Bharat and how supply chain is evolving there. I'll turn to Roberto. Roberto, you've seen various disruptions in supply chain or global businesses, or at least consumer-facing businesses, how they have changed over the last decade. We have seen events that has probably not, we didn't think that COVID will come. We did not think that a Panama Canal will come or a Suez Canal will come. How do you see this? How do you think supply chain should or has built resilience, and what do you think is the future?
Yeah, well, thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. The supply chains are essentially being shaped. Companies are strategizing around the regulatory environment, right? So the regulatory environment is changing very quickly, and it's responding to some very basic components. I think the first one is geopolitical. And the geopolitical, actually, people talk about the pandemic a lot, but the geopolitical came even before that, right? When, particularly during the Trump administration, the US essentially started a trade war with China. And a lot of other countries were involved in that, whether they wanted or not. So that was followed subsequently by the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and now the Middle East, and all those things are, leading to sanctions and leading to new regulatory frameworks which are changing very quickly. Another area is unforeseen developments, so the pandemic or climatic disasters like hurricanes or droughts and floods, and all those things also affect the supply chains very directly. And finally, consumer and opinion and public opinion. Those things are also shaping the regulatory environment, and they again respond to several things. It responds to sustainability concerns, so greenhouse gas emissions. That's one, CBAM in Europe. It's all about that. Or deforestation, or waste management, or conservation of natural resources and water. I mean, all those things are also having implications on the regulatory environment. Health concerns, so sugar, salt, organic agriculture. You see what's happening in Europe at this point in time in response to policies which are shaping after that. Political issues like human rights, labor rights, racial discrimination. All those things are leading to a very fragmented and very unpredictable evolution of the regulatory environment, which makes companies shift from the previous rationale, which was just in time, so I don't want inventories, I want to import and feed my production chain as needed, so shifting from just in time to just in case, because nobody knows what's going to happen. So we have to be several options, and they are diversifying not only the input source, they're also diversifying the target markets. Now, this, of course, is very unpredictable, and I suppose in the private sector, I would be pushing for more international cooperation and supporting multilateral organizations, because at least you have some kind of a predictability in the evolution of the framework. But that, we can speak for hours about this. This is just a kickoff.
Thank you. It's very diverse views. I think I like the way you said that just in time to just in case. I think our whole theme of this event is the big shift. I think everybody in the panel also is mentioning about things that we never thought about before. The Bharat, for example, the kind of rural ecosystem development is a big shift of mindset of how e-commerce ran in India earlier to now. What you spoke is also about a big shift that people have to think much ahead of the curve and also be ready for everything. These are very, very interesting discussions. I turn slightly into healthcare, Sanjiv, with you, and I think it's a very different subject, and healthcare supply chain is very different than a lot of people think, right? What would be very interesting, Sanjiv, is to know from you, specifically in the healthcare industry, what do you see are some of the trends that are evolving, that are business trends, and how do you think that supply chain should keep pace with it?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I think I belong to probably the dullest industry of everyone.
Not dullest, but the most important maybe.
When everybody, I think, was involved in fun industry, I only come when the fun gets over. So, but I'll give you 3 examples, and that will might, 2 where I'm personally involved as a company and as an industry, and 1 more which will touch your heart and understand that why it is important is. Look, I'm probably the only manufacturer amongst the 3 or 4 manufacturers left in the world of anti-snake venoms. I don't know how many people know, but 50,000 people die in this country of snake bites. 50,000, not a small number. And out of that 50,000, 45,000 die because they do not get anti-snake venom in time because they are not able to reach the place of treatment.
You'll have to put it on Blinkit.
Yeah?
You'll have to put the vaccine on Blinkit.
Maybe there's a solution. But I'm just saying that what are we thinking about it is reversing the whole thing. That instead of the patient reaching the treatment center, how can the treatment reach the patient center? Yeah? And therefore, we're trying to bring in a diagnostic element where we know which snake has bitten. Customizing anti-snake venoms and trying to find a way to reach the person who has been hit rather than this. So this is the big change, that reaching the customer rather than allowing the customer to reach you, because the customer is in pain, not in a position to sometimes get there. Let me give you 1 more example on vaccines. And Roberto would have dealt with a lot of this vaccine discussions. Imagine I'm vaccinating a village in the country. And this does happen. I reach the vaccines, I vaccinate the entire village, X amount of population at a particular age bracket, and come back. 25 years later, there is an outbreak and many of them suffer. Why? Because the vaccine that has been reached has breached the temperature control parameters. Now, how dangerous is this? So 2 things are happening in this shift of many cold or let's say temperature control products. One is happening is how can we make it heat stable to defy supply chains. One of the things is to take them out of equation. And second thing that is happening is how do we strengthen the network of cold chain throughout the country in a much different way, where ice creams can be reached. How can we ensure that vaccines reach properly? So this is the second example. The third example by which I would like to say how transformation happening is, let's take I said touch your heart, in the sense that imagine lots of people have heart attacks. And the place of heart attack could be anywhere. And there is a golden hour. Golden hour is in 1 hour you reach the person to the center and you can treat them with medicines that are required and treatment that is given, and generally you get the heart muscle repaired reasonably well. And you save person's life, but also future quality of life. Both are important. Yeah? So if that has to be done, imagine the logistics involved today. What is the logistic involved today? Somebody has to understand, first of all, that this person is not feeling well or suffering an heart attack. Secondly, call for an ambulance, get into the ambulance, get the person driven to the treatment place. All this takes time. This is getting more and more difficult, and many people, thousands of people die because of this. Or even if they save their lives later on, the quality of life is deteriorated. So then how do we manage this? And what is again happening as transformation in healthcare is, how do we manage to reach the place where the person has had a heart attack or such an event? It could be stroke, it could be something else. But how do we manage to reach there with the adequate equipment or the treatment and manage to do that there itself? Why do we need to transport the patient, and why do you create that time logistics done? And then you can talk about drones and anything. And these are experiments happening as we are speaking.
Yeah. I think very interesting. People always say that in India, pizza reaches in 15-20 minutes and an ambulance reaches in 2 hours.
Absolutely.
So I can relate to what you're saying. I think there is a lot to do in this sphere that you're mentioning, and we'll come back to you if we have time, Sanjiv. Talking about the big shift, a big shift is happening in the way India does commerce, Vibhor. And ONDC is, at least in the way I think about it, it's going to be very big in the way it's trying to bring the entire ecosystem together. in the way it's trying to bring the suppliers, the consumers, the portals, and the logistics players like us in the portal. My question to you is, how are you building strategic partnerships? How do you see the future of this? How are you getting the entire ecosystem together? And how will that be a big shift?
Sure, thanks. So I think if one looks at the current supply chains, right, and the partnerships that exist across the supply chain, a lot of inefficiencies there, right? And the reason we are able to unlock those inefficiencies is because when you look at the entire value chain, there's a strong synergy between the financing of that value chain with the logistics of that value chain. And that's a very tightly coupled play today, right? If you can unlock that and break those barriers, then a lot of efficiencies could be drawn out there. Let's take a few examples, and since it's a logistics summit, let's look at long-haul trucking in the country, right? There are a lot of inefficiencies there for multiple reasons, right? The return truckloads to a certain percentage are empty, right? There is very high insurance cost because the way the trucking business is organized in the country today, you have small operators who operate those trucks out there, right? Their working capitals are completely sort of, messed up because they get their payment on credit, and obviously they have to sort of fund their working capital out there, right? So there are a lot of inefficiencies which are sitting in the system today. Now, the moment you migrate to an open network, right, where you're aggregating a lot of demand, which is more access to market, and you're able to provide better financing options because of the information collaterals that exist today, as against asset-based collaterals that were the legacy, I think magic can happen there, right? So I think that's a direction which we're going to say, how can we make information collaterals work in an unbundled environment where you have real-time visibility across the value chain, and you can really unbundle the financial flow of money in terms of the value chain from the physical flow of goods and services across the chain. So that's the focus we're bringing in, and that thought process can be applied to any category, any domain. It could be a B2C, it could be D2C, it could be B2B, it could be services or products, it could be the entire value chain of manufacturing. So from that perspective, that's the true potential that we're looking at unlocking. So the idea here is, how can we bring better access to market? How can we improve the trust value of it? How can we enable high trust at low cost? I think that's the big point out there, right? High trust at low cost. And what role does information play across the value chain? Where we can stitch the value chain in real time is the power of the network. So that's what we're building on. Yeah, it's early days, day zero still, but yeah, that's the direction.
Thank you so much, Vibhor. Fantastically articulated, I would say, the way you put this together. VC, my man, my question is, how are you going to enable all this? There are so many challenges in the supply chain. How do you plan to actually enable the change of consumerism that is going to hit us?
So I've been hearing a lot since the afternoon, right? And not just this panel. Ashneer mentioned that sab kuch jaldi chahiye, sab kuch abhi chahiye, right? Himanshu was mentioning that the next wave of growth is going to come from the tier 2, tier 3 mofussil towns. Ajay was mentioning that the 60% of the demand is now going to come from the next set of towns. So I see a lot of different themes that are emerging, Dipanjan. I think the first large theme I see is, I think the day of one solution fits all, I think, is gone. And I think every platform has unique requirement. Every product has a very unique requirement. Sanjiv, I hope one day self-administration of vaccine will become as normal as anything else, and that day it'll just be the supply chain that's between a person who needs it and you, right? And hopefully that's a big opportunity for us. So I think different products for different e-commerce platform is the need of the day. Same day delivery, next day delivery, reverse pickups, quality checks. I think all of this we already have, and I think to a good extent, whatever is the requirement today of different platforms, I think Ecom Express is ready for it. The second big theme that I saw today was, I think every platform wants to know whether I have 1 shipment or 10 shipments, 1,000, a lakh, can I rely on a logistics partner, right? Because Ashneer was mentioning there's an issue of density. We have the largest reach, and I think Ecom Express has taken pride in having the largest reach in the whole of country, despite the density issue that Ashneer mentioned, which is actually very, very true. And I would also proudly say that we have actually built e-commerce in India by way of first building the reach. So when it comes to reach and when it comes to scalability, I think Ecom Express is well set. We have India's largest automation centers, 30 of them, the largest in India. We have the highest reach. So I think that's well set for the next 2-3 financial years, I could say easily. Third big one that I can see for today is, Sourabh was mentioning how complicated last mile delivery is and how much data plays a role in that. We have done our own share of work on the technology. I don't want to steal Amit's thunder later in the day. He's going to unveil a product which is already showing its magic on the ground for us. And Amit and team are continuing to push a lot more into technology as we go into the tier 2, tier 3 towns of India, where the difficulty of delivering goes up exponentially. But that's where the market is. And I think technology is going to make all the difference, and we are investing heavily into it. The last one, Dipanjan, that I felt was a theme today, someone in the audience also mentioned, shipper experience, consignee experience. How good is it? How transparent are you? How you can sort out escalations. I think it's very important. We have a customer panel that is very handy, easy to use, doesn't require too much training. A D2C brand can go live on our panel in 10 minutes and start shipping, right? That's as easy as it can get. So I'm a little happy that, whatever are the challenges that the panel members were speaking today, I think we are well set for it. But I also do anticipate a few things I think that we can get ready for, and we'll do that. So yeah, Ecom Express is ready for every entrepreneur and everyone that's out here.
Thanks, VC. We are out of time, but I will take, on behalf of the audience, because we have a lot of D2C founders, we have a lot of supply chain experts, senior professionals in the room today. I'll myself take a popular question, and I will ask Himanshu and Sourabh to basically participate in whatever form to answer that. RTO remains a very big challenge for the e-commerce industry. Return to origin. Return to origin is basically anything which is RTO'd is out of your net revenue. There is a part that logistics players play in that, but I feel that this reducing RTO is a joint partnership between a portal and a logistics player. While the logistics player will do everything right to ensure the right speed, the right efficiency, the right last mile dynamics to reduce RTO, there is a part that portal plays. I would like to touch upon that, Himanshu and Sourabh, and maybe talk about that partnership that a logistics player and a portal can play to reduce return to origin. Starting with you, Himanshu, and then Sourabh to wrap up.
So yeah, as you said, and I think we were discussing the Bharat or the tier 2 and beyond opportunity. One of the critical things with that is that the COD component is extremely high. Cash on demand, that component being high, and it varies depending on the player, anywhere from 70% to 90% for those markets is COD. Now COD inherently has a significantly higher RTO profile. It's not so much in the prepaid segment. Interesting, there are actually two broad parts to this problem. I don't have a solution, we are all working on solutions, but there are two broad parts to this. One is that if you were to do a survey of even what you do in the end, out of the supplies that you finally make, almost the last mile payment is another 50-60% last mile payment is digital. It is not COD. So that we jointly need to solve this, because the moment it becomes prepaid, a large part of this problem is solved. So this is one. I don't have a solution. We are all working different solutions. We will not get into solutions. The second part, and this is again equally important, is the quality of the address which is there, which makes it very difficult for anybody to actually deliver it. The address is incomplete. The customer is not able to fill in because, as I said, the customers in these geographies, you're making them fill, most of them opt for some odd reason, opt for the English version, and for them to fill address is not easy. Now, this quality of the address, and we all do quality of the address scoring, I'm not going into more smarter parts, which is in terms of RTO predictability, etc. That's separate, that's algorithmic, let's get that out of the picture. But address quality itself. Now, you look at the issue. Address quality, I am solving separately. He is solving it separately. Somebody else is solving it separately. And that customer probably already has received 5 consignments from somebody or the other. So this is the era and the age of collaboration. And I'll keep repeating that point, why it is the era of, and ONDC is of course one example, but even in areas like this is the era of collaboration. We are trying to crack open a very large opportunity in the market. And how do we solve these problems in some way or the other between the partners
Very
and us
interesting.
together?
Actually, people think it is proprietary. I'm amazed how you're seeing it.
I'm so happy we are moving in that direction. Sourabh, your final comments, and she's already looking at me while you're sitting here.
All right. So I think today RTO is seen again, as I said, as a problem that starts after the order is shipped, right? I think if there is enough collaboration, and I think that's a large part of it, right? If there is enough information flowing between the ecosystem to say that, hey, this is the customer intent that we have seen across platforms, across different avenues that they've shopped on. This is the kind of address that we have seen, maybe sharing lat-long information. I think this is something that we've been discussing for a long period of time, that, hey, it's our customer that we have placed an order for. If that lat-long can come back to us, we can probably use that to take better decisions in their customer buying journey. Converting COD to prepaid is a very large part that Himanshu touched upon. And again, while it's on the doorstep is what is a large payment cycle, can it be moved upstream? And if we are able to find these answers of collaborating and sharing these insights with each other, I think a lot of this decision making can be made in the buying journey of the customer rather than at the customer's doorstep. And the moment we do that, we bring in large efficiencies to the system, which again can be funded into probably making the margins better or making the customers buy more because we can make the products cheaper.
Thank you so much. We come to an end of this panel discussion. It's a privilege to chair this panel with such esteemed panelists. Thank you so much, each one of you. Lovely discussing these topics with you. Thank you.